Welcome to The Explainer. We're all about breaking down interesting ideas from around the world. So today, we're diving into a really personal essay that tries to get to the bottom of a question that I think we've all asked ourselves. Why is it so incredibly hard to live a good life?
Okay, let's just jump right in. The whole thing kicks off with this massive question. I mean, think about it. 5,000 years of history. And it doesn't matter if you're an emperor or just an everyday person. Who has actually figured it all out? To find an answer, the author takes us through this kind of three-part diagnosis.
And that diagnosis starts by looking outward, at the state of the world we all live in. And honestly, the picture he paints is of a planet that's just in a constant state of flux and, well, crisis.
He points out that no matter where you look, no place seems truly safe, One part of the world is getting hit with massive floods, while another is just completely scorched by drought. There's this feeling of constant instability in our own environment.
And it doesn't stop there. This feeling gets even stronger when you add in other unpredictable stuff. You've got wildfires raging in one place, earthquakes literally shaking the ground in another. It really reinforces this idea that we're all living on some pretty shaky ground.
And of course, it's not just nature. The author also points to all the human-made crises, from devastating pandemics that sweep the globe to the constant turmoil of war. So you put it all together, the natural and the human disasters, and you get this backdrop of, well, perpetual crisis that just shapes our lives.
So after looking at this whole landscape of chaos, the author basically concludes that our leaders, they don't seem to have the answers. And here's the really interesting part of this. He believes the solutions, the real hope for progress, isn't going to come from the top down. Nope, it's got to come from the bottom up, from regular people like you and me.
Okay, let's move on to the second part of this diagnosis. This is where he starts to zoom in a bit, from looking at the whole world to focusing on the specific cultural baggage he thinks is holding us all back.
He actually pulls from another text to identify what he calls historical dregs, these really deep-seated cultural flaws. Now I know, it's a long list, but you can kind of group them together. First, you've got all the problems of division, right? Like regionalism and just constant infighting. Then there are these issues with integrity, flattering the powerful, relying on who you know instead of what you know. And finally, there's this deep resistance to change, stuff like treating critics as enemies and always wanting to go back to the old ways. The author's point is that these are the habits that keep us stuck.
So, we've looked at the world, we've looked at our culture, and now the diagnosis gets to its final, and honestly, its most personal point, looking inside ourselves. Because this is where he believes the real problem lies.
His argument is that the real reasons we're unfulfilled aren't really external. It's not the world's fault. Not really. Instead, it's a direct result of what's going on inside our own heads, our own choices. We're lost because we don't even know what we want. We're miserable because we're so selfish. We're stuck in the past, holding on to resentment. And the biggest one? We completely ignore a fundamental law of how life works.
And this is it. This is that fundamental law he's talking about. He calls it the law of sowing and reaping. The idea is actually super simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Whatever seeds we plant in our inner world, our thoughts, our actions, our character, that is exactly what's going to determine the harvest we get in our outer life. Plain and simple, we get back what we put in. This slide just nails the central contradiction in how so many of us live, doesn't it? I mean, look at the seeds on the left. Jealousy, anger, deceit, all that stuff. The author says we spend our days planting these negative seeds inside ourselves, but then we look over at the harvest we're expecting on the right, and we wonder why we aren't living an ideal life. It's a total disconnect.
So, if the problem is internal, it follows that the solution has to be internal too, right? This brings us to the author's path forward, and it has way less to do with changing our surroundings and everything to do with changing ourselves. And he talks from his own experience here, living in all these incredibly different places, from villages in Zimbabwe to cities in Canada. And he came to this one conclusion. Real well-being isn't about moving to some better place. It's about reducing the internal pressure we put on ourselves. All that pressure from jealousy, from resentment, from crazy ambition. And to really hammer this point home, he ends with one final, pretty stark warning. He shows us two lifestyles that he believes are just complete dead ends and should be avoided at all costs. He paints these two really vivid pictures for us. First, there's the pig's life. This is a life of just blissful ignorance, happy in the mud, content with the basics, totally unaware of the wider world. Then there's the dead person's life.
This is just complete apathy, withdrawn, no passion, a walking corpse, as he puts it. Both of them, he argues, are a total waste of a human life.
And so that brings us right back around to you. The author's whole idea is that our lives are just a direct result of the seeds we plant inside ourselves. So this explainer leaves you with a final, really provocative thought to chew on. What seeds are you going to plant today?